Potatoes, butter, sour cream, cheese, chives, and bacon? Oh yes. Why not mix all these ingredients with flour and milk to make a quick bread? More specifically, a biscuit or scone. This biscuit recipe has it all, meaning all the traditional flavors from a baked potato in a bread. American biscuits are a Southern favorite and a bread I grew up eating. They are so simple and versatile that I love adding savory and sweet flavors. Biscuits are as young as America and as old as a scone in Great Britain. After all, biscuits likely originated from the British scone. Let's check out my latest biscuit creation, a baked potato biscuit. For the ingredients, you'll need 2 medium russet potatoes, all-purpose flour, baking powder, salt, black pepper, butter, cheddar cheese, fresh chives, crumbled bacon, sour cream, and milk. Doesn't that sound like ingredients of a baked potato? But to get started, first we need to cook the potatoes. So while I haven't tried it, you could probably just use any leftover mashed potatoes in place of cooking raw ones just for this recipe. But I make this recipe often enough, I always just use raw ones because that's what I have readily available. From scratch, we're going to place 2 medium-sized peeled and diced potatoes in a small to medium-sized saucepan. Cover the potatoes with cold water until you have covered them by at least an inch. You're going to heat the stove on high until the water comes to a boil. You do not need to add salt here, as we will be adding salt when we flavor the biscuits. Once your potatoes begin to boil, turn the heat down to simmer, then add a lid, sitting it on just a jar, and then set your timer for 12 to 15 minutes and cook until the potatoes are soft. Okay, once you've hit about 12 minutes, go ahead and test a potato to see if they are done. You can do that by just lifting up, maybe find one of your larger potatoes and then take a knife, just cut through it. If it cuts through smoothly and tenderly, then they are ready, and these are. You're gonna turn off the heat, and then you're going to drain the potatoes. I'm just doing mine in a colander over a bowl, but over the sink is usually what I do. I'm gonna drain as much of that water out as you can possibly get. With the heat off, place your saucepan back on the burner, the hot burner, and then you're going to put the potatoes back into the saucepan since it's really hot. We need for these potatoes to dry out completely. Let them sit over the hot burner for about 10 minutes until they're completely dried out. Once the potatoes are dried out, and you can tell, just look how crumbly they are. There's no liquid at the bottom of the pan, and notice how they're easily starting to break down. Then using a potato masher or fork, just do a quick mash of these potatoes. We want them really dry and we want them smooth. The potatoes need to be cooled before you add them to the flour to make the biscuits. So you can either just leave them on the stove and let them cool, you could put them on the counter, or you could put them in a separate container and then just stick them in the fridge if you want to do this the day before you make your biscuits. And then just place these in the refrigerator until you're ready to make your biscuits. They should have a simple mash to them. So to begin, go ahead and preheat your oven to 450 degrees. You're going to take a large baking sheet and line it with parchment paper or silicone mat for easy cleanup and set that aside. In a large bowl, we're going to combine all the dry ingredients. You could use a food processor if that's what you're used to for mixing. My grandmother and mom always just use a regular bowl and a pastry cutter, so that's what I'm doing today. But in this bowl, we're going to start by adding 480 grams, which is 4 cups of all-purpose flour. 30 grams, 2 tablespoons of baking powder. If using unsalted butter, you're going to add 9 grams, which is 1.5 teaspoons of salt. If you're using salted butter, which is what I'm using, I'm going to add 6 grams, which is 1 teaspoon of salt. And for that baked potato kick, we're going to add 1/2 teaspoon, which is 1.5 grams of black pepper. Then you're just going to stir the ingredients until they are dispersed. Now comes in the mashed potatoes that we had set aside or in the refrigerator overnight to cool. We do want these to be very cold because we don't want them to melt the butter before we put the biscuits in the oven to bake. So cold is best. If you do, however, find that your flour mixture is a little bit warm, maybe because you put the potatoes in a little quicker than you should, just once you mix in the potatoes with the flour mixture, just put that in the refrigerator until it cools completely. I've done both and both are fine. So then you just really want to mix up that potato into the flour. You should have some chunks in your flour, but you do want to mix it up as much as you can here. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now I can still see the chunks of potato, but guess what? We're about to add the butter and we're going to cut that in, and that'll break down the potatoes even more. Now we're going to cut in 113 grams, which is a stick or 8 tablespoons or 4 ounces of cold butter that should be in your fridge. Diced is easiest to break down, but then again, if you're using a food processor, maybe that's not a concern for you. And I'm going to do the manual hard way, which is to use the pastry cutter to cut in my butter. But of course, use that food processor and you're just going to cut it in until the mixture resembles small peas. And you're going to get that small peas look thanks from the potato and from the butter. So check out this mixture. It's very crumbly due to the potato and the cut in butter. All right, so now we add the rest of the baked potato ingredients. We're gonna add 170 grams, which is 1.5 cups of grated cheddar cheese. I'm using sharp cheddar, but you can use whatever you want. Colby Jack, just a good melty cheese. And then 1 package, which is 14 grams or 1/3 cup of finely chopped chives. And 28 grams, which is 1/4 cup or 1 ounce of crumbled bacon. Bacon pieces, I prefer to use real bacon pieces, but if you made big bacon for yesterday and you've got some left over, add that to this recipe. This may not seem like a lot of bacon, but remember, bacon is very strong, and in a bread, it doesn't take much for that bacon to come out, and you still will get pretty much a bacon piece in every bite. Stir these ingredients until everything is mixed. Wow, look at all those ingredients. There's a lot going on in this bread. In a 2-cup measuring cup or bowl, whatever you have, go ahead and add 255 grams, which is 1 cup of sour cream. I'm just using regular fat sour cream. And then you want to measure out 120 milliliters, which is 1/2 cup of milk. We may need to add more than this, but we're going to start small and then add more volume as we need it. And we're just going to stir the milk into the sour cream mixture. You want to stir until it's smooth. And I am using whole milk, but you can use what you have on hand. Make a well in the center of your flour mixture. Then take your sour cream and milk mixture and then pour that in the center. Now, if you're using regular sour cream and whole milk, then your mixture is going to be a little thicker. If you're using any kind of reduced fat combination of ingredients, then your mixture is going to be thinner, so that may contribute to how much additional milk that you need to add. Go ahead and start stirring until all the ingredients are just moistened. Also, depending on the moisture of your potatoes and whether or not you live in a humid environment, you may need more milk. So again, a lot of factors are going to depend on how much liquid you add to this bread. You can see the cream in this mixture. It definitely looks like mashed potatoes with all the baked potato ingredients. So let's go ahead and flour a work surface. I'm going to use a traditional method for making these biscuits. So we're going to do traditional cutout here. So scoop your mixture out onto the floured surface. You're going to do just a little bit of kneading, particularly if your dough seems like it has a little bit of more moisture. Let's add a little bit of flour back into your dough. We do have a lot of wet ingredients in this dough. If your dough looked a little bit wet, just add enough flour to where it looks dry again. And then flatten out your biscuit dough to about 1 inch thick. You could do drop biscuits. You could, so to speak, just grab a handful of dough and then stick it on your baking pan if you want to do this quickly. One of my viewers on another biscuit recipe said that her mom likes to roll it out the dough into a rectangle and then just cut squares and then just lift the biscuits up and place them on the baking pan. I've actually done that with my yeast rolls. Pat my yeast rolls out into the pan and then take a knife and then just cut them in squares, and they actually turn out really, really well and you get perfect shapes. Then you're going to take your biscuit cutter. I'm using a 2.5 inch biscuit cutter. You could use a drinking glass, anything that's round, or actually whatever shape that you want. And then just start stamping them out and place them on a baking sheet like that, and they should touch. You're going to do that for all of the dough that you have here, and notice how they stamp out very quickly. Once you've stamped out all the biscuits you can, bring the pieces together, pat your dough back out, and then continue stamping them out. I have a little dough left, However, my baking pan is full of biscuits, so I'm gonna go ahead and bake this pan of biscuits. We're gonna place the biscuits in the preheated oven and bake them for 20 to 25 minutes or until golden brown. And in the meantime, I'm gonna finish cutting out the remaining dough. Hot out of the oven, ready to eat. You can eat them now with a pat of butter. Enjoy them for breakfast, lunch, dinner, or anytime you want a really good savory snack. Let's take a closer look. Okay, they've risen a little bit, expanded some, definitely touching together here. They come apart easily. Just twist them, they pull apart. Oh, they're still very, very hot. They're evenly brown on the top, nice and brown on the bottom. You can see bits of cheese oozing out there. You can already spot the chives and the bacon and the cheese throughout, so looks like a baked potato really. You can see where the butter has created these little flaky sort of interior as it would as it melts. The exterior is going to be a little bit crispy from the high heat and also the caramelized butter. Center is soft, a lot of steam coming out. Definitely some little flaky look there from the melted butter. The cheese too is sort of keeping it oozy. The steam just emanates from the center. You can still spot all the ingredients. You've got bacon and chives, cheese oozing throughout. They smell like a combination of baked potato and homemade bread. Totally a souped up biscuit. I love the idea of a baked potato and a bread. These are soft like bread, even though they have the hearty baked potato in it, so let's give it a taste. The potato isn't super defined, but it contributes to the texture, making these biscuits very tender. The bacon, while not much, definitely comes through. The cheese is flavorful and gooey. Oh, I can taste that bacon. The chives provide a mild, earthy taste, not super detectable. The sour cream adds a bit of tang. I like the overall flavor of these biscuits. They would go great by themselves or with a meal like a steak and side salad or a light lunch with a bowl of soup. Oh my gosh, I really do feel like I have a baked potato bread in my mouth. It does have all the flavors. With perishable bacon and dairy ingredients in the spread, I would recommend storing these biscuits in a sealed bag or container in the freezer until you're ready to eat them. The fridge tends to dry out bread, so either eat them now or store them in the freezer. You can easily heat as many as you want from frozen in the microwave or oven and enjoy them whenever you're ready. Thanks for your support in watching, liking, and subscribing. Until next time, make a batch of homemade biscuits and go bake the world.